pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Welcome to our meeting, and thank you all for coming. I wish we had more chairs in the big room, but I think we're all going to fit, so we'll get on with it. Roll call. Rockwell? Here. Battles? Here. 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 Steve? Ronnie? Here. Did everybody get a chance to read the minutes? May I have a motion to approve the minutes of May 23rd?
I'll make motion to approve the minutes of May 23rd.
Is there a second? All right, any discussion? Roll call.
Adels?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Durbin?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Ronnie?
Yes. Thank you. Warrants payable. Jen? Can you take care of that?
I can hear that. Really small in this time, so I move to approve the warrants payable in the amount of $181,727.95. I'll second.
Any discussion on the warrants payable? Roll call.
Adels? Yes. Daniel?
Yes.
Yes. Keith? Yes. Ronnie? Yes.
Thank you. All right, mayor's comments. First thing we're going to do is appoint library board members. We're going to, and I'd like council approval for this, so we'll ask for your approval after I make the appointment. We had 2 applicants for the first board member position, and Amy Sweet was selected. So if you would like to do a roll call for the approval on Amy Sweet.
Battles? Yes. Daniel? Yes. Durbin?
Yes.
Keith? Yes. Ronnie?
Yes. Thank you. And then Scott Kane would like to serve another term, and so he would be reappointed. If we may have your approval for that.
Battles? Yes. Daniel? Yes. Durbin?
Yes.
Keaton? Keith? Yes. Ronnie? Yes.
Thank you. In your packet, the newest event application is for the Red Lodge Fun Run. So if anybody has any concerns or comments or anything like that, then please get them to me. That one is in the process of getting department approval, and so I expect that to be issued shortly. So it's always nice to have comments because we can pass them on to the event organizers to improve whatever issues might have occurred with the event last year in the case of a recurring event. Next up is council update on letters sent to the county commissioners. This is about the airport. The airport is kind of an interesting issue, but you need to pay attention so that you know what's going on with it. And I'm going to give a brief overview on it so that, you know, I hope you can understand it. If there's anything that you don't understand, you're more than welcome to call me or whoever you would like to talk to get more information. But, and this is only by the seat of my pants, so building trim, pointer, and Lonnie's going to pull up the map. Can you? I'll try to get that into there. And I'm going to pass notes that I can see a little bit better over here. So, you know, we've had an airport for a long time. We all love and appreciate our airport. Well, I would imagine that we do. It's handy. I know a lot of people like to walk up there. And, you know, there's nice historic planes that come in and out of there. There's people that use it to travel. We currently have 3 people who have hangars that live in the city, 17 who live in the county. So I believe we have a total of 29 hangars up there. They pay 10.5 cents per square foot for the use of city land, and that money goes back into the airport board. And they use it for operation. I believe it's about $14,000. I'd have to double check on that. But the issue is, so here's the runway, and you know, as it's typical, never enough money, and the airport board would like to become an FAA recognized airport to get funding to rebuild that runway. And, you know, the city's in full support of that application. But here's where it starts getting complicated. So this is, I don't want to break this news, but this is the runway. The dog park is down here. The city water tank is up here. And the walking trails are all through here. This is the area that we use for emergency operations. And this is where they're have some kind of wind sensor that they use for, you know, that sort of thing. But this is, in 2010, there was an agreement, a joint agreement. And that joint agreement has the city of Bridger. This is a joint agreement between the city of Red Lodge, the county, and the city of Bridger. And we all pitch in $1 million for that, airport operations. The 2010 agreement listed this as the only boundary of the airport. This is where the developed hangars are. It did not include the runway. The city is in full support of adding the runway. The city is also in full support of adding enough land to keep that wind weather sensor device in here. But then in 2018, the agreement was changed. The only part that was changed was that the commissioners were put on board. There were no city officials put on board. So we're operating under that 2018 agreement. So, Lonnie, can you switch to the next picture? So, well, not just yet. Oh, go back one. Can you go back one? Sorry. But, so, in order to have this, you know, submitted to the FAA, it needs an agreed upon boundary, okay? And as I said, the city is more than willing to add this to that boundary, but the county wants, and the airport board wants the whole thing. City dog park, up here, they exclude this rodeo grounds and fairgrounds. All the way down here, and this line is submitted by the engineer that's submitting that application, and it goes, I mean, it's the whole thing up there. It's probably got a value of, you know, tens of millions of dollars. And, you know, I know for myself, you know, I have to look at how it best benefits the city of Red Lodge. And so this area in here at one point, I believe it was 2004, was looked at as an industrial park. It's also been looked at as, you know, part of the fire department. I think the hospital was thinking about going in there. But so the city made an offer. I terminated the agreement because here's the dog park. It's not part of the 2018 agreement, and the rodeo board leased this to the rodeo. And the city, again, we're in full support of the rodeo. But this is an area where we pile snow in the winter. You know, I don't know if you've ever been up there, but there's a lot of snow that we need to move somewhere. We hold events there, we permit events there. And we have our dog park here. A lot of people like to go to the dog park, and they lease all this for $1 a year to the rodeo. So that, I'm fairly certain that's an invalid lease. But again, I don't want to put the rodeo in the middle of this because, you know, they're not really part of it. But this is basically the agreement that I offered just to find out what, you know, where we could find some agreement. And the offer was this would be dedicated to the FAA boundary. This continues to be city property. And this would be dealt with a MOU, a memorandum of understanding, so that emergency services could continue to use it. This would be an MOU with the airport board for the crosswind runway, or whatever they want to do with it. I don't know how often the crosswind runway is used, but this area is a valuable area because you know, there's a lot of room up there, and this is all city land, and we don't have any city officials with any authority to manage it. And the airport board is intending to submit this whole piece to the FAA. And if that's done, they can build additional hangars in here. They can build whatever they want in there, and it limits the city's ability. You know, can we continue to put snow here? We would have to get permission for our own land from the airport board. So, you know, I think, you know, as mayor of the community, you know, my job is to look after city assets, you know, and represent, you know, the citizens of Red Lodge. And, you know, it's not as, it's not as easy to grasp as like a short-term rental or, you know, speeding or whatever. But I want everybody to understand this because, you know, council represents you. And we need to make the best decisions on behalf of Red Lodge. But if we were going to operate it ourselves, their budget runs from $20,000 to $30,000, and that comes from $8,000 that the city provides, and the hangar leases. You know, I'm not quite sure how it's all sliced up, but because the hangar leases, I'm not sure if they are included in that budget. So yeah, we could run it. You know, we'd have to be very careful. We would continue to seek funding, but I don't know where we're going to go if the airport board wants this whole thing. And I also don't know where we're going to go if the airport demands this, because this is not required for the FAA. That would be like a 25-year agreement, and once we continue to build hangars in here, you know, it's essentially going to remove it from any kind of development for the city should things change. I don't think anybody wants to get rid of the emergency services area because, you know, we all know that, you know, that's a valuable resource in Red Lodge. But what are we going to need in 10 or 15 or 20 years? So, you know, it's going to be the subject of a lot of the discussions today and into the future. But there's a very good possibility that if the airport board is going to want this whole thing, that the city of Red Lodge will operate it ourselves. I've talked to the department heads, and they're confident that they can run it well and optimize it. You know, we all want a very nice airport. I myself have a lot of pilots in my family. I'm not in any way, shape, or form against having a nice airport. If we're going to have any facility at all, I think we should have a very nice facility. But we need to get past this impasse where, you know, this all or nothing thing, because, and, you know, I want to hear from all of you. So if you have any comments after our meeting today, then please don't hesitate to let people know. Talk to whoever you want to talk to. If you need any more information, then let me know. I represent you. So, you know, that's my job. So anyway, that's pretty much everything I have to say. The next thing is, and that's the offer that I made. I didn't receive a response. Well, I did receive a response, but it was basically the airport board wants to hear from council. They do not want to talk to me. Kind of weird, but then we've made 5 offers for mediation, and they have said that they're not going to mediate at all. We've offered negotiation, but we haven't received any offers from the airport board, you know, as a starting place to say, well, where are we going to go from here, you know? So you know, they have a 30-day or a 90-day period from the date of termination to divide the assets, and then on August 13th, you know, there's not much doubt in my mind that the airport will revert to city management ownership. So with that, I don't know who, are you going to discuss your, Terry Durbin wanted to talk about a mediation offer that council agreed to make. It's the 4th mediation offer. And maybe you'd like to talk about that.
Yeah, so we have this whole thing orchestrated, so.
Yeah, Chris is gonna.
And the whole council.
Is gonna start out. Yeah, so this letter is in your packet as well. Can you guys hear me okay? And this is a letter that we all signed on council and sent to the county commissioners on June 14th, I believe. It says attached is resolution 3627, unanimously passed by the city council at our last meeting. We would like to provide some clarity around the resolution's message and intent, and also to address concerns that have presented themselves since the resolution passed. Specifically, city council would like to express, number 1, council's desire to have the city and their designated representatives work with the county and their designated representatives to reach a workable interlocal agreement. Number 2, council's agreement that it is not council's role to make a judgment on the legality or the mayoral authority to terminate the 2018 agreement, and that we do not believe it necessary to determine the legality of the termination before moving forward on reaching a workable interlocal agreement. And third, council believes this is a timely matter that needs resolution. Resolution 3627 is a request to have the city and their designated representatives participate in a mediated, negotiated conversation with the county and their designated representatives to discuss the issues, including but not limited to a potential agreed upon boundary of the airport. This will allow the airport to apply for and obtain FAA funding, and without an agreed upon boundary, the airport is unable to obtain any funding. As we are quickly approaching June 23rd, council is agreeable to extending the deadline for mediation or negotiation, provided a date certain for completion of the mediation negotiation is agreed to on or before June 23rd. Council is asking for commissioners to respond to the city attorney within 7 days, indicating if you have a desire to work with the city on an interlocal agreement to best serve the interests of all our residents. Respectfully, all of us. Jen is going to then talk about what happened next.
What happened next? Okay. So that was sent after the last council meeting. And since then, the county has responded to that letter. That is also in the packet of information with this meeting. So if you want to read that yourselves, that's where you can find that. And also the mayor has worked with staff to draft a new interlocal agreement as a starting point for discussion. And so now it falls to us as council to discuss what are the next steps. And it's important to do that in front of you so that you can all hear where we're coming from. And so we're gonna kind of start with Terry and go around the table and just talk about what we think the next steps ought to be in moving forward.
Okay,
Yeah.
thank you. So council's planning to put forward our own agreement, but we won't have a full council session until mid-August because of people's traveling schedules. So what I'm proposing, and I'm going to make a move, try to move to get this resolution, this new resolution, discussed at the next council meeting when we have people here, is the resolution of the city council to conditionally delay the disposition of all airport assets. So basically, the disposition of the assets from terminating the agreement called for in the interlocal agreement by August 13, 2023. We want to stay that until October 13, 2023, with the current airport board continuing in authority to maintain the airport in its current state. So we want things to stay this way until we're all here to be able, as council, to be able to discuss what the agreement should, what we think a fair agreement would look like. This would be conditioned upon the airport board and the Carbon County providing the city of Red Lodge with all information concerning all assets of the airport board by the August 13th, 2023 date, as the information is necessary for the city of Red Lodge to develop a new proposed airport interlocal agreement. And so I attended the airport meeting today. They are agreeable to have all of that information to us by the 13th, so that when the council gets together, we'll be able to look at all sides of this and hopefully do some due diligence in the meantime and be able to come up with what we think is a fair and equitable solution. And then we go forward from that. And so, again, it seems like specifically the list of assets that are going to be divided needs to be known. And I think the number one thing I believe, we've talked, via email on or individually to each other, is this needs to be mutually beneficial. And the way this has gotten with this, this contentious behavior is not good. So we're hoping by interjecting ourselves into the picture that we can kind of do a little bit of a reset, look at all sides of it, and come up with something that we think is fair, not only for the city, but also for the county and the airport board. So I will move to, I don't know if you want me to do it now, but I'd like to move to have this resolution added to the agenda for,
I think land use and planning just asked if the mayor would put it on the next agenda, and she agreed, so I don't think we should vote.
okay, all right, good, thank you, appreciate it.
Cynthia?
No comment at this time.
Jody?
I am
obviously in full support of doing kind of a reset on this and moving forward with coming up with a fair and equitable agreement.
Yeah, and I'm all in favor of negotiations and everything, but the biggest thing is, that we've had no movement. I believe it's been 7 weeks, and we haven't had any response. This is supposed to be wrapped up by the terms of the existing agreement in 90 days, and we haven't had one thing for the division of the assets. We also haven't had any offers made, and we've made 5 offers of mediation. So I guess I don't think that kicking the can down the road is responsible. We have, they're working on the master plan for the airport, and we need to get that clarified, who is going to be answering for that. I'm guessing that none of you have been asked for input on the expansion of the airport by the engineer who's working on on the master plan, and that's an important part of it. But since we're not in the driver's seat, we don't have any authority over that. So, in my opinion, I think that there's plenty of time between now and August 13th to get us that list of assets and divide them. I don't know if you've driven up there, but I don't believe there's a whole lot of assets to divide. And I'm fairly certain that the Red Lodge assets would go to Red Lodge and the Bridger assets would go to Bridger. And so that's my input on it. Jen?
So a couple of things from me. I do think it's the case that they have responded. It's not necessarily the response we were hoping for, but we have gotten communication, so that is a step. I'm looking at the airport board meeting notes from today. It looks like they are, it is the case, as Terry said, that they're agreeing to provide that list of assets by the August 13th deadline, which would be extremely helpful. And I guess I would just say, I've also, we're hoping that some of our planners, like, city planners and also our contracted planners can have a chance to look at the boundary establishment, the proposed boundary establishment from their lens. And I guess I would say, I personally just don't feel like until we have that list of assets and also data on the operations and expenses of the airport, like it feels premature to say anything before looking at that data. So I'm excited to get that both from the county and from, the proposed, if the city were to take it over, what would it look like for us? And then I kind of want to spend the rest of my couple of minutes just talking to the community, because there are a number of issues that come to council that are nuanced and complex and hard to understand and kind of a pain in the butt. We are elected by you. The 6 of us up here are elected by you to represent your interests, and hopefully on most occasions you can look up here and find at least one of us saying the thing that you would say if you were up here. And that's the goal. And we genuinely want your feedback on this issue, and we know it's hard to participate when there's fast-moving pieces, there's a lot of angles and lenses, but we represent you and we take that very seriously. And no agreement can be put in place without a vote of this council, period. That cannot happen. That's how our rules are written. There's separation here. And so I just want to say that there are lots of ways to participate. I know it takes time and energy and it's complicated, but you can email us. You can please come to these meetings. We debate up here in front of you for a reason, so you can see us work things out. And coming to the committee meetings, maybe you can't make a meeting tonight, but you can come to the Land Use and Planning Committee meeting. We meet Tuesdays, the day of council at 10:30 in these chambers. And also we're all open to having personal meetings with you. If you're like, none of these work for me, but I'll go have coffee with you on a Saturday morning, one of us will come. And I want you to think about protecting your precious time and energy for this issue, because it's easy and kind of enticing. I do it too. It's easy to read a divisive headline or some kind of summary of an issue and decide that you think you know the whole story enough to have an opinion on it. But just pay attention to the outlets where you get your information, because we are responsible to you. And it's important that we share with you all the things that we know to the best of our ability and to solicit your feedback. And it's easy to dismiss participation if you think you already have an opinion on the issue because you read, you know, a couple of sentences in an article in a paper or something. And so it is complex. We are all up here learning with you to some extent. And I think it's really important to understand that the airport board issue does affect all of us. It affects county residents too. Please come with questions and comments and concerns, and pay attention to like who you're giving your energy and your effort to, because you have very limited time and energy and effort, as all of us do. And this is an important topic, and we are responsible for making sure that you're educated. So, and answering your questions. So that's what I have to say about that. And I do agree with Terry asking to put this new resolution on the agenda for next time. I think that's a way to move forward. And in the meantime, we have time for the land use planners to kind of look at what's been put forward already, and give us some feedback on that. Thanks.
Chris?
I was going to say exactly what Jen said. Yeah, I think we all want a resolution on this, and I don't really have much to add other than what has already been said. So thank you for saying it so eloquently, all of you.
And so we'll plan on having more of that discussion on July
11th.
July 11th. And so please come to that. And the next up on the agenda is the course of action, and maybe we'll, I think we've already had a little bit of a discussion here. And so what?
I'd like to ask you a question. So when you said a discussion, I want to make sure though that this resolution, so we can introduce a resolution and have a vote on it next.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean,
It was unclear because the thing is that it is a time constraint. We want to, move forward with this. And so I just want to make sure it's clear that I sent this resolution to all the city council members, and we'll probably be ready to not only discuss it, but also have an action on the next city council meeting.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah.
That is correct. And, we're dealing with some vacancies on council. So I believe council's agreed to keep contested things when everyone can be present. Is that correct? Or I don't know how this is going to go as far as summer vacations and things like that, but I'm leaving it to council to make those decisions. So we will have it as an action item on the next agenda.
Yep.
All right, would anybody like any further discussion at this point for the things we know about the airport? Or any questions about, if there was an airport meeting today that several of us were at, and if, we're also going to have public comments shortly. And so while we can't answer your questions, we can hear what your questions are and make sure that we have answers at the next meeting. Did anybody else have any more words to say on this?
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
So as far as council moving forward with coming up with the interlocal agreement will we be able to do that at full council, or will a lot of it be done in land use and planning and then brought to, or I guess, what are those next steps for that part of it?
It's what we want. I mean, we can, land use and planning can certainly.
Well, I'm
want
totally fine with doing it
Yeah.
at a council meeting.
Yeah,
I would absolutely be fine with doing it at a full council.
I think a broader audience would be, all of us here, so that we're all talking and discussing would be probably better.
We
Okay.
can still talk about it at land use and
Yeah.
planning, right?
Right, yeah, you can. Talk
Yeah.
about it at admin and finance, because those are
Right.
Feel free to let me know if there's any questions or information that anybody needs.
I would say data on the operations and expenses before
That's
the library, before the next meeting would be helpful.
That would be very helpful.
And can I add one more thing?
Yes.
I just want to echo what you said, that, as mayor, Mayor Cosgrove is very open to hearing what you have to say and talking to you about this subject. So if you do have questions about things, reach out. Well, yeah, reach out to all of us, but I know that you've been working on it longer than all of us.
Yeah, I've been working on this since January. It's not an easy, we're not gonna be able to ring everybody's bells, but the most important thing to me and the rest of the council, I'll speak for them, is, that we work on behalf of what the community wants. So, we'll leave it at that and talk about it again at the next meeting. Next up on the agenda is public comments. So if anybody has a public comment, please state your name, keep it to 3 minutes. Keep your comments helpful, and please approach the podium, state your name. We'll get to the online audience as soon as we exhaust the people who are present. So is there anybody who'd like to make a comment about anything on or off the agenda? Please approach. And then I believe we're going to have another hearing on short-term rentals. And so if you'd like to save your comments on short-term rentals and make them during that public hearing, you're welcome to do that also. Hi.
Sandy Conley, 307 Hagen Avenue South. One thing I noticed during the discussion is there was no discussion about how this affects Bridger Airport. And I don't know if Bridger Airport or the city council there was part of this or just left off. But I was really going to talk about short-term rentals. What the vote comes down to tonight is property rights. The freedom to use your property as you wish. Short-term rentals are used by our tourists to sleep in, eat, watch TV, the same as you and I. Red Lodge is a resort town dependent on tourism. This vote will limit our tourism. If our downtown businesses and restaurants fail because of your actions here tonight, this town could die. Businesses could be boarded over. The market could be forced to close. The gas stations could be closed. We'll be looking kind of like Fromberg. Other small towns could be affected. Bear Creek and Roberts benefit from the tourism industry in Red Lodge. The short-term rental committee, I feel, was selected based on a bias towards short-term rentals, with the exception of Jim Kapp, who only had 1 vote. The chair of the committee, who was asked to make recommendations on restricting everyone else's property rights, doesn't even own land in Red Lodge and had only been here for 6 months. And the statement in the resolution to form this committee said that some HOAs have begun to prohibit or place restrictions on short-term rentals. Residents living within non-HOA residential districts look to the city to create similar protections and preservation of residential character in the neighborhood. Residents here, from my experience on planning and zoning, which does restrict, residents don't like restrictions of any kind, or they would live in one of those HOA communities. And defining residential character of a neighborhood depends on each individual's interpretation. The Planning and Zoning Board opted to not cap short-term rentals nor classify ownership, even though 2 of our 7 members were members of the short-term rental committee. Only the land use committee of 3 brought these restrictions to the city council. And classifying ownership or management of short-term rentals is just wrong. Proposing to give more licenses to one group versus another is going to get the city sued. My suggestion is to monitor the percentage of short-term rentals, but not to put limitations in place now. Our current short-term rentals are not full all the time. The more we have, the less profitable short-term rentals will be in Red Lodge. Some will be sold, some will be turned into long-term rentals, some will be dark. Let the market self-adjust and don't restrict everyone's livelihood and enjoyment of Red Lodge.
Thank you, Sandy. Anybody else have a comment? Any more comments on the floor?
Sorry.
You're welcome to stay there if you'd like.
I'm just coming up to speed. My name is Don Hardy. Just coming up to speed about the airport. And like a lot of people, the city's confusing because reports are in conflict.
Are you familiar with the report that came out on June 15th, a news story from the Montana Independent News?
You know, and like I said before, we can't respond because that violates some of our open meeting laws. So you're welcome to read your comment for us to hear, though.
Okay, well, what confuses me, and I don't know why you can't respond to this, in this story, it's referring to you. It said she has consistently stated that the city has no plans for the land around the airport. At the same time, she has publicly stated publicly that if the city does decide to use the land currently dedicated to emergency helicopter use, the quote, helicopters can just use Gabriel's land. Mr. Gabriel has not been contacted, and we contacted Gabriel's and found that they have not been contacted. Can you say as much as whether that's true?
You know, it's not fair to bait me, however, that is not true. And that is absolutely not true. I have been told that Gabriel's land was used historically at one point in time for a fire. At no point in time, and I say that to stop the spread of the rumor mill. There are some incorrect things that have been printed. And again, I would refer everybody to call City Hall if they would like those things clarified. I am more than happy to explain any kind of questions like that. I would prefer not to do it at this meeting because I would like to stay in line with the protocols. So do you have any more questions? Because if you do, please call me. Otherwise, please read your statement. Thank you.
I don't have any more to say. It's just that I just want to know if this is true. And you said it's not.
Next, anybody else have a comment, question? Oh.
Yeah, as now a regularly appearing member here, I'm Bo Ewald. Live here in the West Fork. What's our address, Judith? 8 Franklin Lane, I guess is the official address.
I know your address.
And I've been associated with the airport here for about 25 years or so, probably know as much about it as anyone. And I would just like to say a few things that are a little different than the mayor's seat of the pants recollections about the airport. The airport board has no plans to expand the airport. The airport board is not trying to expand the airport. It's rather trying to preserve it. And the 3 parts, as I've said before here, that are most important are the runway, the hangar area, for the runways, the hangar area, and then where we do the emergency services, where you see the helicopters operating. Those are by far the 3 most, and I guarantee that people involved with the airport will work very hard to preserve those because they're in the best interest of the whole community, we believe. With regard to the question earlier, the city of Bridger was not part of this precipitous dissolution of the airport board, and they have sent a letter saying they don't support it whatsoever. This is an agreement that's been going for a long time, started in 1959 actually, and it included the 2 cities and the county. There are 2 members of each of the airport board from each city. I'm appointed by you. Steve Smith is appointed by you. And we're your representatives. If you have questions about the airport, its operational risk, we're glad to answer those. In 2000, so that started in 1959. In 2004, Mayor Gessling asked for a better map of the airport area, the hangar area, to be included in this agreement, which was done. And then in 2000, these agreements are done about every 6 or 7 years. In the 2010 agreement, both the map of the airport and the map of the hangar area was included. Then in 2018, when the airport, when that airport board authority was done one more time, they forgot to include the map of the airport. They included the map of the hangar area, but not the map of the entire airport. And so the mayor, from her view, says that the airport is only the hangar area. And we say that but the airport is the airport is the airport, and has been that way since really about 1940 and been in continuous use since then. We all know where it is and how big it is. And it would be easy to fix that old agreement by inserting the correct map of the airport from those days. But doesn't seem to be an interest in that. So kind of the bottom line, we're not trying to expand the airport, but rather preserve it for the three major functions that it serves: general aviation, the hangar and the business area that's there, and then thirdly, the emergency services. You know, when the agreement was blown up by the mayor, that was the agreement under which you would mediate if there was a dispute. Well, if there's no agreement, there's no agreement that calls for mediation. So how would that work? Having said all of that, I think there are reasonable people on both sides, and I think we can figure out a path through this. So if we work toward that, I think we can accomplish that. But it's going to take reasonable people on both sides. And again, from the airport side, we'll want to preserve those three assets for the community, and for the mountains, and for the forests, and for the people who visit us here. So we'll work toward that. And I would also say that, you know, I think we would be glad to host, I don't know, it's an open house or.
Excuse me, can you wrap it up, please? Because the time is 3 minutes for everybody.
Certainly. Thank you, Mayor. So we will be glad to host sort of an open forum where you can come and learn about the airport. We'll show you what it does, what it contributes to the community, and that sort of thing. We would be glad to co-host that with some of you as well, if you would like.
All right, thank you. Anybody else have a comment? Steve?
Steve Smith, I live at 517 North Hauser. I'm a member of the airport board. I'd like to talk to 2 points. One is what we're calling the Northeast Quadrant, where the heliport, helicopter search and rescue firefighting operations have been held. There's concern if the airport does not control that land. And there's no question that it's city-owned land. I think the question is, does the city control it, so to speak, or does the airport board? In 1959, we believe that was the intent. Because the heliport has been built up to the point where it can utilize up to 9 helicopters for search and rescue, firefighting. We also Mount Maurice burning, and I don't know how many of you may have seen the helicopter operations up there. To have a good, thorough, safe, complete operation for events like that to that level. The flood, of course, is another one. You have to have a lot of room. You have to have flat space. You have to have areas where helicopters can see from above. They can come and land. You have to be able to service the helicopters. But that would be fuel and maintenance. To do that, you need equipment. You need trucks. You need personnel. For fuel alone, those big Chinook helicopters that you saw, the twin rotors, use a lot of gas. And to fuel those aircraft, you have to have a semi-truck. That semi-truck has to be able to drive up to where the helicopters can land. There has to be, the ground has to support them. It has to be clear. We have done that at this facility. So we are concerned that if that the airport does not control it, that operation could become in jeopardy. There's been talk about an MOU, which is fine. I don't know, we haven't talked about lengths of time. The FAA funding plan is for a period of 20 years. So if the FAA plan goes through the way it was originally intended by us, at least, we would control that land, the airport, including that Northeast Quadrant, for 20 years. Our concern is if we get into a situation where the city essentially controls that and not the airport, as the mayor said, tens of millions of dollars, it's very valuable land, money is scarce. Would there be pressure? Would there be desire on the part of the city to do something with that land other than have it as a heliport if it's worth that much money? So our concern is we think it should stay in the control of the airport, ensuring that at least for 20 years, that will be a safe haven. That will be a place to defend to threats to our area, as we all saw the last 2 years.
Thank you.
One more point, if we have time, I'd like to refute a little bit on Gabriel's. Harris Gabriel was called when the Mount Maurice fire began. I believe it was by a helicopter company, and they were looking for places to land a helicopter. And they asked Harris, would you mind if you landed a helicopter? There were words to that effect. And Harris, being the good person that he is, says, well, Mount Maurice is on fire. If you need to land something here, yes, we can talk about it, or let's go, see what happens. The following day, he got a call back saying, we don't need your land. And they found another site, which turned out to be the airport. So Harris there's never been an operation on Harris's land. You really can't use, well, you say, well, it's a pasture, it's cows, there's room for helicopters. The helicopter can land there. Is the ground level? What kind of vegetation is on it? Is it safe to land a large helicopter? Can you drive a fuel truck on it? On a hayfield with cows on it? Maybe difficult. Anyway, so I think the information on the game is not probably accurate.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a comment? Anyone online have a comment? Go ahead, caller. Please state your name. Oh, that's a. Any comments online? Any more comments on the floor? Again, if things aren't clear, please call us. There's a lot of these things. There's a lot of ins and outs to this issue, and I don't believe anybody is trying to mislead anybody, but we just want to work forward toward a functioning agreement that we're all informed with. So, did you have a question or a comment? I'm sorry, I thought I saw you raise your hand. All right, well, I guess we'll move on. Next up is standing committees. Admin and Finance, resolution number 3631, Jody.
I move to approve resolution number 3631, a resolution of the City Council to authorize a special prosecutor to be appointed as special deputy city attorney for conflict cases.
Any discussion? Terry?
Yeah, I just had a question. So I'm just wondering why this resolution now? So is there an immediate need for that, or are we just covering our bases and found a hole? And
There's an anticipation of an upcoming conflict for our attorney, so we need to make sure that we have a process for handling that.
Basically, this is exactly what it says it is. If there's a conflict of interest with our city attorney, then Deborah Kranikoff would be our assistant, our special deputy city attorney, would take over for him.
Any further discussion? All right, roll call.
Alice? Yes. Daniel? Yes. Durbin? Yes. Keith? Yes. Ron? Yes.
Thank you. Resolution 3430, Jody.
Yes, I move to approve resolution number 3430 amended, a resolution of the City Council of Red Lodge, Montana to adopt the 2023 City of Red Lodge fee schedule for the Community Development Department. So the main changes to this, and Courtney can probably talk to that, is that we added, do you want to go ahead and talk about it?
Yeah, and I actually have a new one that I learned about today.
Okay.
So the first one is that we don't have a permit fee for floodplain applications. So it's just nice to be able to offset some of the costs. I mean, it's several $100s for me to authorize, review floodplain permit applications and enforce them and to check in on them and to follow up on them. So it's a small fee to help offset some of those costs. I don't intend on using them for anyone directly affected by the flood, but just moving forward, it's good for us to have a permit fee for that. The one that I found out about today, I thought I had heard about it during the legislative session, but it's for subdivisions, and it's the line item for exemptions. Can't remember exactly what it says, but like exempt fees or, so anytime we have a subdivision application, we can review it, to see if it's going to be exempt from the subdivision review process. And so currently we have that at $200. That's because the state had maximized the review fee at 200. They just increased it to $400. So I would like to increase the subdivision exemption review to $400. And again, we can't, that one goes into effect October. So if I got one before then, it would be $200. But while we're updating the resolution, might as well put that in there.
And then, so would we need to move to amend the resolution now, because the fees are attached to it?
I think we just,
Because you're amending it. Oh,
right.
okay. So we would just change it from 200 to 400. Okay. And then, Brian, did you want to talk about your building fees?
Yeah, so the one I added is just a third-party review fee. So if we get a big commercial project, there's companies that we can use that will do a third-party review on plans, blueprints, just to make sure that things aren't missed. Comes from their, whoever's doing it, comes from their architect, I can send it off. They've got people, this is all they do for a living, is review plans. And so it's just to make sure that all aspects of life safety, construction points are hit, nothing's missed. And it's just to allow me to charge for that process to recoup the cost of what it would be to have a third-party review, look at big projects.
Any more questions? Terry?
I had a question. So I was wondering when the last time these were set and what the percentage that the fees are going up, just for an idea.
So our last one was in 2017, and for the planning division, I did have Great West Engineering look at it to see how our rates compared to other communities. So I didn't increase any of them except for the subdivision one. So where we're sitting with our current fees are pretty typical of other communities similar to Red Lodge, and then fairly consistent with also county fees.
So if we look on the budget this year, we'll see that this bump is going to, what, we're going to get a little bit more profit revenue from this, or are we just covering what our costs? I'm just trying to understand.
So mine will basically be a pass-through.
Okay.
So when I send it off, if they vary $125, $150, $175 an hour, depending if you gotta have an engineer, architect, whoever's gonna look at it. So it's just a pass-through. Deal. I'm not planning on making money on it in my department, but if they send a bill for $250 for 2 hours, that will just get passed on to the permit fee, added on to cover that cost.
Courtney, which, so sorry, just looking at where you want to change the subdivision fee, can you, I'm looking at 3 line items that I feel like it could be major subdivision, and major subdivision over 34 lots.
No, there's one that says exempt plat. Yeah.
Or boundary relocation.
Got it,
Yeah,
got it,
it's under subdivision.
Thank you. Thank you.
And that actually, some communities in the call with Mako and League of Cities, they said 400 really doesn't cover all of the review, like staff fees and noticing and all of that for subdivision review, because it's massive, but it's at least better than $200.
Okay, thank you.
Any more discussion or comments?
And so the only other change then was at the bottom, the floodplain permit is $50.
Yeah, and that basically covered the noticing, the public noticing.
Okay.
All right, ready for the roll call? Roll call.
Battles?
Yes.
Daniels? Yes. Durbin?
Yes.
Keith? Yes. Browning? Yes.
Thank you. Next up is Chris with the interlocal agreement for Carbon County for Black Mountain PID software.
So, I probably am going to turn it over to Courtney too, but just to introduce it, this is an interlocal agreement. The city has created a tax increment financing district, and the city wants to procure a Black Mountain module in the county's assessor program for calculating that tax incremental revenue, and the cost for that is $5,400.
Yep.
Take it away.
Yeah, I mean, so this is for our urban renewal district, which uses the tax increment finance tool, for those funds for that district. And so the county assesses those increases each year, and their Black Mountain just has a module that'll just automatically do it, which is really nice. But the county has so many line items that adding this additional line item kind of adds like a whole lot more. So, we don't have any money in that district currently because those assessments haven't been done yet. So we just want this in place. The county is willing to pay for that module, and then with this agreement, the city would reimburse them for the module. So annually, they would send an invoice to the city for $5,400 plus like maybe some of Angela's staff time to kind of do some administrative work there, and all of that can be paid with Urban Renewal District funds. It's just that we don't have the funds currently to start that process.
Do we have an estimate of how much that urban renewal district is going to bring in a year?
It's going to be a lot more than what the urban renewal plan. We had a third party do sort of like a estimation of what could happen. It's really hard to try to figure it out just because it depends on how much development happens each year and, you know, all these different changes. But the Alpine Basin was included in the urban renewal district, so that will provide a lot more than what we don't know until we know.
Obviously, it's more than $5,400.
Yeah.
Quite
Oh, yeah. I had Denison review the agreement, and I had a couple of changes that I wanted to just run by you guys. So the first one was the number 4, resolution of disputes and governing law. Denison's recommendation was to remove that last paragraph. So it's not really necessary. And then number 7, termination. I'd like to add a sentence that says this agreement shall be terminated upon the sunset date or other termination of the tax increment provision pursuant to Montana Code annotated 715-4292. So essentially just saying, if this agreement isn't terminated for any other reason before our sunset date of the tax increment financing district or any other termination method approved by the Montana Code, then the termination of our TIF district terminates the agreement.
I had a question. So it says here the annual cost of the software is $5,400, but you talked about buying a module. So is there an upfront cost for us to buy the module?
No, that's the $5,400, and then it's just an annual $5,400. Yeah, because they already have the Black Mountain software, so it's just purchasing of the module.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I have a third one, number 8, for notice of just changing the notice to the city council to be the mayor, because that's just, we always have it as the mayor in our agreement.
Any further discussion?
I think I'll just add that our committee talks about putting this item on the next agenda for a vote.
Yeah.
So if anybody has any questions about impacts or anything, let us know. Thanks, Courtney.
So, what was that you just mentioned? Oh, discussion. We'll have it on the next agenda.
Yes.
Thank you. Ordinance 963, Jim.
Yeah. So.
If you want to give a little introduction.
Sure.
and we'll start the public hearing.
963. So 963 is an ordinance to regulate short-term rentals within city limits. This is the second public, or sorry, this is the second public hearing and second reading. And the ordinance is included in the packet. We've had lots of discussions about this, and lots of feedback from the public, and thank you. You've come to speak during the public hearing. Is the next item to open the public hearing?
Yes.
Or, okay.
So, thank you. Yep. So with that, we'll open the public hearing. If anybody would like to make a comment about the short-term rental ordinance, then please approach the podium. And again, use your 3 minutes and try to stay within the timeline. State your name and your address and make your statement. So go on up.
My name is Mary Harmon. I'm at 219 South Haven, and I own 4 short-term rentals in Red Lodge. I've been invested in short-term rentals here since 1999. Before Airbnb, before VRBO, we did it all through personal checks in the mail. So I feel a little betrayed by the city of Red Lodge. In 1999, they were thrilled to have short-term rentals come in, and that's when resort tax started. So they were really thrilled to have that money coming in. And now we went from that to, we don't like you guys. I really feel like we're kind of the black sheep of the family. It's not a good feeling. We've invested hundreds of thousands of dollars because Red Lodge encouraged it. So the fees, 2 years ago, we paid $50 a year for our fees. This year we'll pay $500. If you break it up into every individual building, we'll pay $1,000. So we'll go from $50 to $1,000. We didn't used to pay for our fire inspections. Now we're paying $50 per unit. That's another $200 a year. That's a big increase for a family business. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Cheryl Fowle. I live at 82 Meadow Circle. My husband and I are owners of a rental house. Our house has been a long-term rental, a short-term rental, and it's now in the long-term rental market again. However, when the tenants that we have in here decide to move out, we may very well want to go back to a short-term rental. We're not sure what we would do with it, but we feel like we want the right to be able to choose ourselves. I mean, these are our private property rights. We have worked very hard to keep this house up. It's been we've planned for this to be a source of revenue in our retirement, and we've planned the long term, and to have this potentially taken away seems not fair. When the council created the Short-Term Rental Advisory Committee, it was to ensure public health, safety, and welfare of its residents. I watched all 3 presentations, and I didn't hear any evidence of public health or safety issues. In addition, I understand that the community survey yielded 990 replies, and 85% of those that replied don't think we have an issue with short-term rentals. That's a really, really high number. So I'm not sure why we are spending so much time and effort on this when there are so many more important issues going on in our city. Limiting short-term rentals is not going to solve the housing problems in Red Lodge. I feel like the time and manpower that has been spent on this issue would have been better spent trying to attract an investor or a developer to build affordable housing. There's been a lot of manpower spent on this. In the last few years, Red Lodge has been impacted by the pandemic, a fire, and then the flood. Every business in Red Lodge has been negatively impacted. The only press coming out of Red Lodge right now should be, we're open for business. Please come visit it. If this is passed, I feel like the message indicates that we have so many people and so many issues that we are going to have to limit short-term rentals, so please stay home. And I don't understand why we would do this to our businesses. If we were maxed out on the amount of short-term rentals, this would make more sense to me. But to make an issue out of something that is not an issue seems both rash and a negative impact to our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen.
Jen Kapp, 8 North Platte. I'll first talk as a resident, and I moved to Red Lodge with very humble beginnings, you could say, close to nothing. We chose to work very hard and build equity in real estate. And I stand in favor of private property rights and I defend the choice to make decisions around the property that I have paid for, renovated, bled for at times, because I'm kind of clumsy, cried about, and wholeheartedly improved. That being said, I will move on to the company that I own and operate with 3 other business partners, AAA Red Lodge Rentals. Addressing the the Resolution 3607 that created the Short-Term Rental Advisory Committee. It addressed public health and safety and nuisance. I'd like to present that the economic engine our company represents actually reduces the incidence of public health and safety that leave the city open to liability. Our homes have sidewalks that are shoveled in the winter. They have lawns that are mowed in the summer. They are inspected annually for fire, by the fire department approval, and they are licensed annually by the state for health accommodation. Stairways have railings. Outside furniture is in good repair. Decks are shoveled if the snow load is too big, etc. If anything, it can be argued that our homes reduce liability to the city, and liability to the city was one of the stated missions and concerns in Resolution 3607. The homeowners we represent within residential Red Lodge often carry the snow removal costs that benefit the residential neighborhood, meaning big snow, 52 inches all at once. We manage a home on that block. Our homeowner incurs snow removal costs that open up the block. It opens up street side parking at the homeowner's expense, not the city's expense. Resolution 3607 said, and Sandy referenced this, that residents living within non-HOA residential districts look to the city to create similar protections and preservation of residential characters of neighborhoods. To my knowledge, no survey was conducted prior to the approval of Resolution 3607 that created the STR Advisory Committee. I served on that committee. There was no software in place in 2018 to give us an accurate number of STRs in 2018. That it says that they've increased since 2018, and they might have, but to make the declaration that they increased, we don't have the data to say that. For the record, I live in the city limits. I am your constituent, and I did not ask for this protection. If you pass this ordinance, AAA Red Lodge Rentals will continue to model the best of short-term rental management. We will be a good steward of the ordinance, because that's how we operate. That being said, we ask you to vote no. Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. That was perfectly timed. Any more comments for this issue?
Michael Keys, McGillen Avenue, Red Lodge. I don't envy you guys. It's a tough subject, and I don't have a stance on it either way, but I do know this. Every business in town is trying to hire. I've been here 23 years. VRBOs and that sort of stuff didn't exist when I got here. I've heard back and forth, they don't affect the long-term rentals. They do affect the long-term rentals. I don't know either way. I don't have the numbers, but I do know this. I've watched a lot of people who work in our restaurants and bars in the last couple of years lose their home. They've moved away. We have some businesses. One of our businesses here in town, we're short-staffed also. And our lead person has been renting her house for 7 years. The owners of that house are starting to get up in age, and she's worried that soon they're going to sell that house. And she knows that if they sell that house, it is highly probable it will not be a long-term rental. And if it is, it's highly probable she will not be able to afford it. And if it's not a long-term rental, she's already told us she'll be moving. She's a very viable part of this community. She's been on the fire department. A lot of our employees serve the community in many ways. Again, it's not an easy subject. And I also believe in property rights, but I also believe in the community is affected by what we do on our properties. Again, I don't have a stand either way on this one, and I don't envy what you have to do. But I do know that we are losing workers from this town because many of them, the house sells, gets turned into VRBO, they've got an ordinance. So I do think that's important to take that into consideration.
Thank you, Michael. Any more comments? Public hearing for short-term rentals. Anyone on the, well, of course.
No. Chelsea Tuban, 803 North Hauser. I had sent a lengthy letter to the council and the mayor, and I wanted it to be in the packet for the community. I'm not sure if it ended up in there. But there's a few bullet points, and I really wanted to be as brief as I could while still highlighting the things that I found extremely important. Some of the main bullet points that I tried to touch base on was specifically concerns with the initial resolution. Again, public health and safety, nuisances, those were the establishing factors, along with wanting the city to be an HOA, which I find silly. But mostly, that was one concern I had from the start of this through now. Public health and safety, nuisances. Nuisances I do feel were addressed, and I do believe is in this ordinance as of now. But public health and safety really wasn't the priority in the conversation. It was community character. And as said before, I ask any person in this room to define it the exact same way. I don't think that it is the city's position or their responsibility to have to make that definition for us. I don't think that's a fair thing to do. But moving on with that, community involvement, I do feel that there are some choices made for that committee that I probably wouldn't have made, but that wasn't my call. I wish that there was more communication with our public health and safety, whether police enforcement, with business owners in the area. I feel that a lot of the survey wasn't really taken into account, some of it was dismissed. And we did have a ton of people just clamoring to be involved. Another piece that I thought was worth considering was the information gathered. Granted, there's a lot of information gathered, but one specific thing that I think is really vital for considering a lot of the information gathered, the communities that it was gathered from, not necessarily a good fit for our area. We are not Vail, and we are not Truckee, and I can see the correlations, but I feel like breaking that down a little bit more detailed of the pros, cons, differences, similarities would have been nice. Another really crucial piece is the data that we were collecting. Most of this and most of the driving force came from a post-pandemic climate, post-pandemic market. So the real estate market didn't just do this here. Nationwide, we saw crazy sales. We saw crazy increases in prices. We saw interest rates at an all-time low. And so that drove up not just our short-term rental community market, but it also drove up our real estate market. A big part of that is it also drove local travel throughout the state. People cannot travel outside the state, I understand. But I do think it's very crucial to recognize that we are looking at this in a very unique time that you cannot replicate and likely will not happen again. So that's why continuing to gather information as we stabilize and start to analyze those factors would be really important in moving forward. I live in the city limits. I am a resident. I am your constituent, and I did not ask for these protections.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else want to speak on this issue? Anybody online want to speak on the short-term rental ordinance? All right, last call.
I will.
Okay. Please state your name and your address.
Priscilla Neff, 1101 and a half North Broadway. And so I feel like because so often when I've been hearing all the comments, it's a lot of the business owners, and I value that perspective. But I want to point out to the folks on council who I've heard also say that this is a non-issue, that there are a lot of voices not in the room. I would echo some of what Michael Keys said about the folks who are the workers in the businesses. I mean, if we're afraid that businesses are going to go away and we won't have tourism and that's going to kill the town, if we don't have workers in those businesses, that's going to be an issue as well. So I would just kind of echo that for the folks that aren't in the room, who are working in those businesses right now and aren't coming to these meetings because they're working. Those voices need to be thought about. They are constituents as well, and their concerns are not being represented. And that's a balance that I see that needs to be thought about, right? Like we need to have our businesses, we need to have that tourism, but we also need to have those workers. And so all of those voices need to be considered. Thanks.
Thank you, Priscilla. Anyone else online that would like to comment? Okay, last call. All right, public hearing. Oh, come on. So,
I felt that everything had been said, Heather Cranstory, Bear Creek, and Red Lodge, Montana. I probably should have took this off before I started speaking. There's lots of letters that have been submitted. I don't know that they all made it in time, but I hope that they are still kept up for people to be able to read and see. Otherwise, they will be resubmitted again. So please let me know what we need to do for that in the future, not at this meeting. I just kind of want to touch base, which is not in this letter I wrote to myself, about the short-term rental seeming to be the reason why we don't have affordable workforce housing. And I don't feel that if we eliminate the short-term rentals, that's going to solve the problem. And one of the reasons why I feel this way is because I manage about 80 plus long-term rentals. More than half of those are affordable rentals. I understand why people don't want to put their homes into the long-term rental pool. The damage that is done is sometimes not describable. So it doesn't mean that all tenants that are affordable workforce housing destroy property. There are some really great role models out there. I have some of them, but I don't feel that the short-term rentals, putting a cap on it is going to solve that problem at all. And again, I have so much to say, and I just want to say that it's been a long road with bumps, turns, and times divided. I'd like to say thank you to all of you who have shared their input, and for those who continue to contribute. This appears to be a wound that has yet to heal. I appreciate those not only who sit in front of us, but also behind us for all of their time and energy. Emotional. I'm not one who feels this should have been an issue, and I'm saddened by such energy put into attempting to curtail one's right to do what they want with their home. I have yet to see an unkept vacation home and unaware of any harm caused by a guest. An annoyance can be expected by any neighbor from time to time. However, most of it you can talk through and or if necessary, call the police. We tend to look past a messy neighbor, a barking dog, domestic spats, not abuse. We don't look past that. Dead grass, non-functioning vehicles, campers parked on the street with extension cords across the lot. Many of our neighbors are strangers that some of you never see. You work opposite shifts, some day sleepers, some night owls. Some are social and some will do all they can to avoid you. There are pluses and minuses with a neighbor who is long-term and one who is a short-term, with the main difference being with a vacation home guest who typically is someone's mother, father, child, grandma, grandpa, and friend. If you don't like them, if they annoy you in any way, they are usually gone within 2 to 3 days. You typically never have to engage them. No energy is needed unless you want to say hi or ask them where they're from, tell them their favorite places to eat and your favorite things to do, and be on your way. This is what I hope for. Many have looked through the trees and in the windows, listened intently, and found that short-term neighbors is just like everyone else.
thank you.
Thank you.
All right. We're gonna have one more last call. Any more online comments? All right, public hearing's closed. Thank you, appreciate it. So, would anybody like to make a motion?
Sure, I will, in an attempt to move forward with discussion and things. I will move to approve ordinance number 963.
Discussion.
I actually would like to move to amend ordinance 963.
Second.
So the amendments will be eliminating the third whereas. Second amendment would be under section 5. Oh, yeah, sure. The elimination, whereas homeowner associations have prohibited or placed restrictions on STRs, residents living within non-OHA residential districts look to their city to create similar protections and preserve the residential character of their neighborhood. That's the,
Where is that one?
that is the third whereas.
Oh, okay.
So eliminate third whereas. And then under section 5, recommending that it should read, the City of Red Lodge hereby establishes a threshold of total STR licenses permitted within city limits D, calculated as a function of the total number of permitted short-term rentals in the City of Red Lodge A, divided by the total number of dwelling units in the City of Red Lodge, calculated by Disaster and Emergency Services B, with an additional 100% added, and in parentheses, 2 instead of 1.5. This would effectively change the threshold to 20% instead of 15.
Any discussion on this? Changes? Terry?
Yeah, I just want to say that, I want to commend the city council on this ordinance for actually working together and compromising on this, because both of the things that have been put forth today to change were things that were real sticking points for some of us. And so I just wanted to say how much those that are maybe on the other side appreciate that you did listen and you did amend it, so thank you.
Any comments on the ordinance? Or discussion on the ordinance? All right.
The first motion is to approve the amendment.
Oh, yeah.
Wait. The first motion is to approve amendment, and then the second is.
So yeah, so the motion on the table is the amendment.
Okay, and it was seconded. And so any more discussion on the amendment? All right, roll call?
Battles?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Durbin?
Yes.
Keys?
Yes.
Ronnie? Yes.
Thank you. Okay. All right, any further discussion on the ordinance?
Yes, we need to move to approve the whole ordinance as amended, and
And then I'd like to move to table the vote.
Wait, so where are we on motion?
so we moved to approve the amendment. Now the motion is to approve the ordinance, and Terry
I'd like to move to table the vote.
to approve the ordinance.
Okay, any discussion on, is that been seconded? Any second? Any discussion on that?
We're really just doing this because there's, not all 6 of us are present, and it's important that all of us are here to represent you in this final vote. And I just want to explain to the public that because we have amended this resolution, we will have 2 more public readings.
Any more discussion? Roll call.
And this is to table it.
To table it.
Okay. Battles?
Yes.
Daniel?
Yes.
Durbin?
Yes.
Keys?
Yes.
Ronnie? Yes.
Well, there's several of you, I'm sure we'll see again.
We love to hear from you.
All right. Next up is, resolution 3628, for wastewater PER. Who's introducing that?
So, Chad Hansen.
Oh, Chad.
The Great West, he's online, so he can talk about all 3 of these.
Okay, Chad, you want to give us an introduction?
Good evening, Mayor, Council. For those that I haven't met, I'm Chad Hansen with Great West Engineering. The resolutions you have, traditionally, MSEP, which used to be TSEP, every 2 years would put out planning grants that you could use for preliminary engineering reports or CIPs. Those planning grants have always been $15,000 and required a dollar for dollar match. They got a bunch of reverted ARPA money this cycle. So they are allowing communities to apply for up to 4 planning grants. You can do 2 water, wastewater, or stormwater PERs, a CIP, or bridge PER. And they also raised the limit to $40,000 with a 20% match of the total project cost. So visiting with Jim Bushnell, he wants to take advantage of the opportunity to update the wastewater PER, the stormwater PER, and we can apply to DNRC for the $10,000 required match. So those would be 100% grant funding if we're successful. And then he wants to apply and update the CIP. And he says he has the money in the water and sewer budget for the $10,000 match there. And so it'd be an opportunity for the city to do $150,000 of work for $10,000 of match.
Thank you, Chad. Does anybody have any, wait a minute, did we do a motion on that?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Okay, so let's, have a motion for resolution 3628, then we'll do a discussion, and if anybody has questions for Chad at that time.
Okay, so I am going to move to approve resolution number 3628, authorization to submit MSEP grant applications for wastewater PR. Second.
All right, is there any discussion or questions for Chad?
I'll just say thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you for finding this money.
Would you like to bundle them all up and do a motion to pass all three?
Yeah. Okay.
Would someone like to make that motion and second it?
All right, I'll make the motion to approve resolution number 3628, authorization to submit MSEP grant application for wastewater PR. Resolution number 3629, authorization to submit MSEP grant application for stormwater PER. And resolution number 3630, authorization to submit MSEP grant application for capital improvement plan.
Second. Thank you. Now, does anybody have any further questions for Chad or discussion amongst yourselves? All right, roll call. Yeah. Roll call?
Battles?
Yes.
Daniels?
Yes.
Durbin?
Yes.
Keith?
Yes.
Ronnie? Yes.
Thank you. Again, thank you all for coming and thank you for being patient and sharing your thoughts and being good neighbors. Much appreciated. And if there's any correspondence on any issues that we received before the deadline on Thursday, I believe at noon, they're in your packet. And with that, I'll have a motion to adjourn. You're adjourned. Thank you.